What kind of content does really well on Instagram in India? A day in the life of. What is the difference between marketing and product marketing? All marketing essentially emerges from product marketing. At a L'Oreal, at a Nestle, at a Unilever are all product marketers.
0 to 1 journey, founder led marketing, let's say.
Because founder led storytelling on social is cheap. So I think founder led like branding and marketing and storytelling is incredibly important. And in today's time, people trust transparency and authenticity. They like it. People obsess over click through rates. People obsess over cost per clicks.
So, how can a marketer really measure the success metrics and the failure metrics for the same? Welcome to another episode. Today I'm excited to host Ayushi Mona Singh. Ayushi is a marketing powerhouse with a decade of experience across Fortune 500 MNCs, startups, D2C brands, and non-profits. Ayushi is a gold medalist from MICA and one of business world's 30 under 30 entrepreneurs. She has mastered the art of B2B and consumer marketing, branding, sales enablement, and corporate communications. In this episode, we dive into what sets a product marketer apart from marketers in general, how product marketing strategies differ for 0 to 1 startups versus scaling products, the value a marketer brings to the product development processes, common myths about branding and positioning, measuring success in abstract branding efforts, and how early stage founders should approach product marketing. This episode is must listen for founders, marketers, and product enthusiasts, offering actionable insights to amplify your product's market impact. Don't forget to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and YouTube. Your support helps us bring in more inspiring and insightful conversation to help you learn from leaders. Let's jump in and hear from Ayushi. Hey Ayushi, thanks for joining today. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Darshan. The pleasure is all mine.
So let's start with understanding the nuances that goes into marketing vertical, right? And I feel that different companies has a different need of the vertical, and at the same time, it also plays different role as well, right? In order to cater to product or services or whatever they are into. But what really sets a product marketing apart compared to marketing in general?
I think it's interesting that you ask what is the difference between marketing and product marketing,
Exactly.
because all marketing essentially emerges from product marketing, right? Why do you want to run a brand campaign, a performance campaign, a content marketing campaign, a product marketing campaign? It's effectively because you want to sell something, right? And in the most basic sense, right, you want to sell a car, you want to sell shampoo, you want to sell a comb, you want to sell toothpaste, right? So
Right.
effectively all those marketers, right, who've come, right, and have worked at a L'Oreal, at a Nestle, at a Unilever are all product marketers. We don't think of them that way because the entrenched idea has become that somebody who is running marketing for a Kit Kat or a Surf is a brand manager, but somebody
Right.
who's running marketing for a payment gateway at Razorpay is a product
Product marketer,
marketer,
yeah.
right? And then there's obviously services marketing, right? So if I'm selling a service like a logistics or a cab ride, right, or an electricity bill payment service, that's effectively a service, right? A banking service.
True.
Um, and that's distinct. So to understand this whole emergence of product marketing is very important, and a lot of that has to do with the rise of technology, because when people were selling surf, soap, shampoo, moisturizer,
I guess 15, 20 years back, let's say.
or even today, right, D2C brands, right, like a
For that
minimalist
matter,
selling a
yes.
moisturizer today,
True.
right, they're all still product marketers. The only difference is that their product is tactile, their product is something that was a commodity that's been made into a brand, right? So
Right.
um a bottle of shampoo is a commodity, the reason it becomes a product is because somebody puts packaging on it, slaps a logo on it, defines a proposition, a pricing and distribution strategy, which are the 4 P's of marketing, right? It's always amused me because the 4 P's of marketing are product, pricing, promotion, and place, that is distribution, right?
True.
And somehow people forget and increasingly think of marketing as a promotion function, right?
Exactly.
And that idea is where sort of product marketing took hold when you started having a lot of technology products, right? So the whole thing about product marketing, so say a product marketer for an app where you buy shares, right? Or becoming a product marketing manager for a software product which helps you design creatives, right?
Right.
It all came from the fact that, hey, now there's no physical product.
True.
Right? So there is no decommoditization happening in a sense of a physical product. But now there is this thing that can be seen on a laptop, can be seen on a desktop, can be seen on a mobile phone or a tablet. And now you need to build the same sort of aura around it. And you had R&D people building formulas for soaps and shampoos, and now
Right.
you have developers doing what the R&D team was doing. And in a sense, right, the product manager became the marketing manager, right? Because um, you know typically in a physical product, right, suddenly if you see, right, that let's take a wave of uh, social trends that shape physical consumption. Okay. So, till quite a few years back, there was just shampoo and maximum anti dandruff shampoo, right?
Right. Correct.
Now, there are 30,000 variations of shampoos, right? There's everything from
Yes.
like a keratin to a colored hair to a dry hair to a damaged hair to volume to a,
Everything.
yeah, everything, right? And now how does a brand manager react to it? A brand manager goes and says to his formulation person, right, an R&D person, that hey, our competitors have now entered the market for curly hair, so build something uh, and study the texture of curly hair and come with a product for it. Okay, this R&D person makes it, the formula gets a go ahead after testing. A packaging is thought of, a pricing strategy is thought of, a distribution strategy of is thought of, and all of that is really thought through by the brand head or the category head, right, at
Right.
a FMCG company.
That was a single person led
Yes.
strategy, you can say.
Yeah, in the sense that's what a brand is, right? So
Right.
if and that's say one way of diversification. Now what has happened is that role really for online products has been taken up by product managers, right? So if a product manager is, say, the product manager at a food delivery app, and they also want to get into an adjacent space, the marketing manager is no longer involved. The product manager realizes that my competitor is building this feature. I
Right.
also need to have this feature. He will go to his designer and his developer, right? The
Yeah.
designer will come up with something. The developer will, write a code basis, a PRD that the product manager has decided. And then all that the product marketing manager will do is promotion. So
Right.
what has happened, right? And is that the whole ownership, right? That somebody who is a brand manager or a product, physical product seller, right? Somebody who sells beer, somebody who sells toothpaste, the kind of ownership that they had and the understanding that they had, right, was not diluted, because it was their responsibility to see what numbers have come in, where is
Right.
distribution happening, what are competitors selling, uh, what are the new threats that have emerged, what are the new opportunities that have emerged, and shape the brand accordingly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is why that's still the dream of most marketers कि मैं FMCG में जाके brand manager बन जाऊंगा, because that's probably one of those spaces where still marketers are asked to own things end to end. And and while of course there's a sales team that runs the distribution piece,
Correct.
and there's a revenue team that runs the pricing piece and all of that, but a brand manager stitches it together
Hmm.
in the technology led sort of
Companies.
companies, right? Where people are selling apps for personal finance, apps for loans, apps for food delivery, apps for booking tickets. Everything is really with the product guy, if you really think of it, right?
Yeah.
Because the product guy will say, hey, let's in we see that the product manager runs travel website, and he says, hey, we're not getting enough international opportunities
Number
in
of bookings
or
on the
number of
same.
bookings or whatever, right? And then the product manager is going to react very differently.
Hmm.
He's going to say, figure out, why is somebody going to my competitor, why is somebody not coming to me. He will do user interviews.
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
the FMCG equivalent was doing FGDs or talking to customers or doing physical visits to kirana shops or sitting with mothers and fathers and children, depending on obviously what category you're in, and all sorts of things, right?
Absolutely.
Now all of that is with the product manager. So I think, uh, to come back really to fundamentally what you asked, right? Marketing versus marketing. Product marketing, in a very practical sense, is a far more diluted form of marketing because it takes away from the four P's, right? It takes away product power from you completely. Um,
Absolutely.
Distribution, uh, because these products are distributed via an app store or hosted on a domain, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Is also really not something you can do anything about. The maximum control you have is to distribute it via advertising or promotion strategies effectively. And then obviously pricing and revenue, etc., also no longer really held with you. If you're in the
Right.
B2B space, your sales team
Will takes
owns
care of
owns
those.
that relationship.
Absolutely.
And if you're in the consumer space, your product team or growth team or whatever it is. And I think what is interesting and what has happened is that product marketing in a way has led to that whole growth function, which is thoda PM, thoda marketing,
Huh.
right? It's that nice middle ground where you use marketing tactics,
But at the same time, you
but
have to pay attention to
yeah,
design, development, R&D,
yeah,
entire function
yeah,
altogether.
and you have that exposure and experience. So I think the way to look at this, right, if you want to become a product marketer is, right, what is a product that you want to be responsible for marketing? The
Hmm.
experience of marketing a product, a physical product, is very different from the experience of marketing a service, and is very different from the experience of marketing a technology tool, which is like an app or a SaaS interface or whatever it is,
Whatever it can.
right?
Hmm.
And I think that's how I would distinguish marketing and product marketing. Um, in the real sense, it's a far more diluted form of ownership, sadly. But it's at the same time, it's also very interesting for people who want to work in technology, because one way that communication professionals and creative people, apart from design, can really blossom in tech organizations is to support on advertising, communication,
Yeah.
positioning. And that doesn't change, right? So if I'm positioning my you know SaaS solution as uh, XYZ,
Right.
right? The process behind doing that and positioning my shampoo as XYZ, the core of it remains the same. You have to understand the customer, you have to understand
Absolutely.
the market, and the promotion aspect maybe is in fact richer, because uh, ultimately physical products are only used and defined in particular ways, and technology is ever expanding and always more interesting. So
Hmm.
people who work in product marketing get to explore that side of a more agile world versus people who do product or brand marketing.
Right. No, that's so interesting. And one highlight that I draw from this is earlier product marketing were doing the job on the ground, understanding more side of the consumer things and things like that, right? Where the actual manufacturing and all those sort of a stuff is not where you are highly involved in, right? But nowadays, where you are in the product marketing manager side of a role, You also have to pay attention to what exactly is being built, how you are going to market it, right? How are user going to like it or not, right? And everything, the process around the same. So that is so interesting. Help me understand how does this role differs, right? When you are into 0 to 1 journey of a digital product versus existing product that you need to scale.
This is a extremely good question, and I have to tell you from my experience. Um, I worked with a lot of early stage entrepreneurs because I was at IMA Ventures. And one of the things that I would do, obviously, is portfolio support to startups, who worked with us.
Right.
And they were all in this journey, right? And to me, I think that was one of the most interesting sort of stints that I've also done in my career. Um the early experience is very interesting for me, and it's something I write about extensively, it's something I talk about extensively, uh, because the early experience is very distinct from a mature experience. And let me tell you some of the reasons why.
Hmm.
Right, most marketers today come mentally prepared
Right.
and skill wise prepared only to run marketing at established organizations. So
Why
if
is
you
that?
so imagine, what is the pool of marketing talent in the country today?
Hmm.
It's people who work at brands and it's people who work at agencies, right?
Right.
It's a mix of the two. People who work at agencies in creative functions obviously have creative skills and a creative bent of mind. And there are people who worked at brands who have a business bent of mind,
Right.
who are mostly MBAs, right? So even smaller brands prefer people who have a background in some form of business education, or if they are in a specialist industry, right? Like an automotive brand would really want somebody who's been an engineer, even if they've not done like an MBA.
True. True.
So what has happened is that in the last 10, 20, 30 years, all of these MBA schools, right? Whether it's, an IIM or uh, any of these schools, have trained people to become good business marketers for built businesses. So today, Darshan, if you are
Hmm.
the brand manager of a Surf Excel, you know how to be a brand manager for that really well,
True.
because you know that you have to work with an agency, you know what your market share is, you know what your sort of entrenched competitors is,
Yeah.
you know, you have all the benefits of distribution in the world. Now think that you decide today to start a D2C brand selling detergent
Completely from scratch.
completely from scratch, right? You don't have distribution. You don't have a product formulation, you don't have packaging, right? uh, your you don't have a unique insight, right? Everything is new to you.
Right.
And it's so hard because a marketer in that situation has to be the CEO,
Hmm.
because if you're building from scratch, right, which is why till you attain a certain level of maturity, a
Hmm.
CEO is the CMO and a CEO is the CMO for the longest time.
They
They can,
have to be.
yeah, they have to be. And what is interesting is now that, coming back to this whole thing, right, talent is hence good at running campaigns, and I'm telling
Hmm.
you, I've dealt with this myself. I have worked at very large organizations, and when I switched to the startup ecosystem, I realized it was immensely hard for me to navigate it, because I was so used to running experiments on a different scale, right?
Hmm.
I was so used to incremental gains being lower. When you're a large brand, small things you do
Hmm.
have far less disproportionate impact than if you're a small brand and you're
Yup.
trying something, right?
Exactly.
So even a small thing can spur like a whole chain reaction. So a talent nahi hai market mein which is very good at early stage marketing.
Hmm.
So there's something called early dot partners. I think Meghna started it, and they exclusively help founders to unlock marketing at early stages, because you'll
Hmm.
realize that founders, when they are in their early stages, for instance, uh, they the one of the first few times, right, founders would come to me when I started consulting and working with them is they would come to me and say, hey, my competitor is here, वो LinkedIn पे post डाल रहा है, I need something for personal branding. मुझे मेरी वेबसाइट बनानी है, I need this on my social. They would only think of marketing very tactically as social media execution, as website creation, or they'll be like, hey, मेरी corporate film बना दो, investor को दिखानी है. Things like that, right? It would be extremely so. When I started working at IMA Ventures, I realized that, these 20, 30 founders are all speaking to me. All of them want an agency, a video, a social media
Just
manager.
a just to create a presence, let's say.
Yeah, and obviously, and they're all extremely unsuccessful at creating a
Doing it.
presence because people follow people they know of.
Hmm.
Nobody's interested in following a page with 155 followers, but everybody's interested in following a page with 2 million followers. That's how success begets success, right?
Exactly.
So, inputs, right, when I was working with early stage founders was extremely tactical. Talent in the market does not really understand the early stage journey, and founders themselves don't realize that you can help in other ways than just uploading something on social media or writing a caption. Who are tech founders or have not been exposed to marketers before, they really think of marketing as a very agency sort of function where you're, tactically managing things. What people don't realize is that one of the most core aspects of marketing is actually understanding your customer. And there are 20 ways that you can today understand the customer that a marketer can help you with.
Oh.
Right? And that's something that is crucial in the -1 to 0 stage. So when I was working with founders at IMA Ventures, and even now, if founders reach out to me, the way I tell them to explore working with their first marketer is
Hmm.
to work with the most strategic marketer they can find at their budget. Find
Hmm.
somebody who can think, and find somebody who truly deeply understands your product and audience. One of the most fun projects I've done was actually with a climate tech startup where the CMO was actually the chief scientific officer because he knew everything. And
Right.
see, making a video is very easy. Putting a post on social media is very easy. Understanding क्या बोलना चाहिए, understanding what to say is the most difficult thing. So if you're doing the -1 to 0 journey, the founder should be the CMO. So
Hmm.
do not delegate, marketing execution as communications execution to some
Hmm.
people. And I see this all the time. That is crucial. And if you aren't interested, right, a lot of tech founders just don't want to be bothered, right?
Exactly.
Then delegate it to somebody who understands the problem as well as you do. I mean,
Hmm.
a CMO is a chief business officer equivalent, or a chief sales officer, or a get business and understand the TG officer, whatever it is. So whenever I've seen founders take a very, very tactical route, I've said, hold on, right?
Hmm.
This is not how you should do it. This is not the approach that's going to get you the gains that you want.
True.
Uh, there is no point having 5 social media channels. There's, I've seen founders, who are on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest. I'm like, क्या कर रहे हो? रुक जाओ, right? If this is your niche, just spend time here. uh,
Hmm.
get talent that can understand your problem. Don't get marketing talent. There's this one founder in Punjab, I still remember, who called me once and said, hey, I've hired this girl from Unilever, and she was working in Bombay, and now she's come to Chandigarh and she's terrible. Unilever mein kya sikhate hain? I said, she isn't the problem, right? But if she's worked in a setup like Unilever, right,
Then you are asking her to work on the startup like yours, right? Not going to
she
work.
cannot work in that ecosystem. Uh you either need to get her the time to unlearn, and right,
Yeah, absolutely.
and you have to give her that breathing space, or you have to realize that you need a different mindset, right?
Yeah,
So
I think that's right actually. Mindset is what makes people different, right? When you
absolutely.
come to a startup, there are lots of nuances that you need to do on a daily basis, which often you don't get to do in big organizations like Unilever.
Yeah, of course, because you're never executing. So I have been doing digital marketing for so many years. The first time I actually ran and set up a campaign, right,
Okay.
was when I moved on the startup side. But the whole act that, you have to do, like, you have to install a LinkedIn tag, right? Nobody at a Unilever or a Google is
Would have
dealing
done
with
that.
those problems. They're dealing
Absolutely.
with completely different problems. So
Hmm.
you need somebody at an early stage who's very comfortable with execution,
Hmm.
who is not dependent on
True.
agencies, who has not learned helplessness because they've been working with, multiple partners and everything is outsourced. You need somebody जिसको धंधा या तो बहुत अच्छे से समझ में आता है,
Yeah.
राइट, या जो बहुत अच्छे से समझना चाहता है. So, that intent is very important. So you can come from a large organization, right? But how willing are you to get your hands dirty,
That
right?
instinct has to be there, otherwise it
Yeah.
won't work.
Yeah, absolutely. So that whole, I mean, the one reason that I've sort of really cherished working in that early state startup thing is, right, because founders, they are just asking the most fundamental questions. They're
Hmm.
asking things like, हमारी brand positioning क्या होनी चाहिए, right? And if a founder is asking that, right, before a series A,
Hmm.
they don't really need to just
Right.
sell. Get there. And even the best brands in the world are going to constantly reposition themselves.
Great, Ayushi. So people who are working in branding and positioning side of things, right, does lot of things, right, which also has different metrics to look at, different nuances that goes into it, right, different kind of a communication that also you need to do, and which also creates couple of myths as well, which non-marketers don't understand.
Hmm.
Can you precisely tell us what are those myths?
I think the biggest myth that people who don't understand marketing is that they think the logo is the brand. हमारा हमें ब्रांडिंग करनी है, हमारा लोगो बना दो, right? I know large companies who just have logo guidelines and they think that's the brand guideline because
Hmm.
they got like logo guidelines made by some agency, right, who made mocks on merchandise, who made mocks on creatives, and they're like, yeah, yeah, this is our brand guideline.
Right.
But the fundamental belief, right, that a lot of people hold about branding is that branding is just logo and looks, right? Slightly sophisticated people also sort of think कि अच्छा ब्रांड बनाने के लिए एडवर्टाइजिंग करना होता है,
Hmm.
right? And then very often you'll find a lot of people tweeting or making comments on social media that, hey, look, Tesla doesn't advertise, Elon Musk never advertises.
And
Now,
hence I need to do to make a brand.
so advertising is useless and all of that, right? Important thing I think to discover as people, and especially business owners, take more marketing decisions for themselves is that a logo is not a brand.
Hmm.
A logo is at best a proximate visual depiction of what your brand could do or stand for. A brand is not your product, right? A brand is so much more. So especially B2B founders, right, they're like, हमें branding की क्या जरूरत है, we are B2B. And I've heard this so many times because I've worked with like 15 plus B2B founders, and I've worked in the B2B space across like a pharma, logistics, SaaS, multiple SaaS businesses, and so on. Right? And always come down to, yeah, we are B2B, we don't need branding.
But
But the
why their mindsets are like that?
because they think branding is equal to advertising plus logo, right?
Just because of that traditional
Yeah, that's a
mindset.
traditional perception. Perception is still, ये शैम्पू की बॉटल है, इस पे अच्छी पैकेजिंग करके सुपरमार्केट में रख के शाहरुख खान के साथ मैं ऐड चला रहा हूँ, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
That's how a lot of people perceive branding, right? But a brand is so much more, right? It's the promise that you make. So very, very interestingly, uh founders, right, who invest in the B2B space
Hmm.
in branding efforts, and I'm not saying branding, I'm saying branding efforts, realize that they discover a, and unlock a lot of hidden value. So what is your brand really in the B2B space? It's how you are introduced to the product or onboarded into the product. It's
Hmm.
how your consultative sales or demo call happens. It's how you are reached to when there's a churn, right? Or when you drop out, right? Or you want to sort of renegotiate your pricing. All of that forms brand. It's not just that, hey, our logo looks nice, our logo is on our website, we do social media posts in our brand template. It really, a brand is nothing, it's a promise, it's consistency, and that consistency can happen anywhere and anyhow, right? And it is very often the hidden, latent perception that's inside everybody else. So I
Hmm.
remember seeing very recently a bunch of internet jokes that, you're either like a Ola and a phone pay person, or you're a Ola, phone pay, Swiggy, or you're a Zomato, or this,
Zomato.
right? And then this person has just bracketed this thing, and a lot of people are joking, hey, I'm a Google Pay, Zomato, and Uber person, whatever. So people associate and affiliate with brands, and in the consumer space it's very obvious, but it's also very obvious in a B2B space, right? Somebody who's a Salesforce customer is
Hmm.
not a HubSpot customer, and that
True.
is not a Lead Squared customer, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Effectively they're all doing the same thing, right? uh, but the brand is what you resonate with. If I'm an
Hmm.
enterprise business, I resonate with the scale of what Salesforce provide. That's my brand affiliation. उसके लिए Salesforce को advertising करने की जरूरत नहीं है, right?
Sometimes it also has to do with the kind of relations you also have with your customers, right? So
Yes.
all the touch points where your customers got to heard from you, know from you, right?
Hmm.
Which creates a brand in their mind. Is
Yes.
that fair to say?
That is fair to say. In fact, today morning I was speaking to somebody who's the CMO of a Series B business, and they are in the US.
Hmm.
And one very interesting thing that we were talking about was that branding is what everyone except the marketing team does.
Okay.
क्योंकि how you talk to your customer, uh, how you how your procurement team talks to its vendors,
Hmm.
right? How you treat your employees, all of that goes into building your brand, building your perception. A brand is a proximation of collective perceptions, really, in a way. A
Hmm. Hmm.
marketing team is doing tactical advertising, राइट,
Hmm.
बेसिस दोस परसेप्शन. कंज्यूमर इनसाइट क्या है? कंज्यूमर इनसाइट तो यही होता है ना कि मैं जाके कस्टमर से पूछूं कि व्हाट डज द कस्टमर थिंक अबाउट दिस.
Right.
But the customer's thought comes from the perception of a brand that has already been built. So you automatically think that Nirma is a mass brand and an Ariel is a premium brand,
True.
right? Now, sure, you can reverse engineer it and you'll be like, oh, Ariel is an English name. They do campaigns like Share the Load.
Hmm.
Nirma is a Hindi name. They sell in tier 2, tier 3 markets. You can reverse engineer those perceptions, but it's the product, how the market has adopted it, right?
That
that
makes
just
it different.
that just makes the brand.
Hmm.
So I was just thinking when I was speaking to this person that this is ironical, but it's kind of true,
Hmm.
because what everyone does builds the brand. A brand is not built between a marketing manager and an advertising agency and a CMO. It's really just so much of experience, product quality, and which is why people say no ki no good marketing can sell a bad product.
But let me put it this way, right? There are lots of things that you consider as a building blocks of a branding, right? But still, all of those things are vague in nature. Not everything that you can measure precisely, right? So, how can a marketer really measure the success metrics and the failure metrics for the same?
So I think there is an unhealthy obsession with measurement, and I'll
Okay.
tell you two things. One is that for the longest time, right, marketers had no tool to measure.
Hmm.
Okay, uh, people did surveys, and then when digital came, suddenly you had a chance to measure, right?
Right.
And marketers went crazy over it because suddenly their job had a sort of quantification that's really valued in corporate jobs, right? ये
Right.
मेरा metric है, ये मेरा KPI है, and so many marketers spend so much time, and I would say waste so much time
Hmm.
thinking about moving random metrics. right?
Okay.
And I think
What are those like?
so many of them, like people obsessed over click-through rates, people obsess over cost per clicks. Now I'm not saying that these are bad metrics. I'll sort of explain what I mean
Sure.
by why I feel that the obsession with metrics isn't necessarily good. So for a lot of people who like reading, if you go and read this book by Rory Sutherland called Alchemy, one of the most sort of interesting things that he says right at the beginning of the book, right, is that the opposite of a good idea can also be a good idea. The opposite
Hmm.
of a logical idea, which is say an illogical idea, can also drive business. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, for I think one of the most iconic sort of examples that he's spoken about is the Red Bull example. Okay,
Okay.
so when typically businesses launch a new product, right? They do focus group discussions, right? And people say, "Iska flavor acha hai, iska taste acha," and so on. When these guys did it for Red Bull, people hated it. They were disgusted,
Okay.
right? Because Red Bull tastes like crap.
Uh-huh.
But it's the most one of the most enduring brand building case studies in the world. They own a Formula One team, right? They've made adventure synonymous with them, right? And it works. But if they looked at the measurement, right? If they'd gone and said, "Hey, qualitatively, we spoke to 100 people, 100 out of 100 people hate this,
Uh-huh.
right? Let's not do this." They would not have created jobs, they would not have created revenue, they would have not created enduring campaigns and whatever impact they've created over the
There won't be
world.
even a company today.
Exactly, right? So when I say that a lot of marketers obsess with metrics, it's largely to justify their jobs to corporate bosses who are
Hmm.
very used to seeing it, right? Because your sales guy is coming and telling you कि देखो इतना call हुआ, इतना closure हुआ, and then you are sitting and you have nothing to say except, "Hey, we made a film with this guy and it's getting good reviews," right? It seems very weak. It
Right.
seems like, so what,
Hmm.
right? And which is why a lot of marketers developed and have developed over the last few years an obsession with analytics and metrics, right? I do think that there is a lot of value in analytics, but what analytics, what metrics, right?
Hmm.
Is Are you chasing how much you're selling, right? To what extent, right, should you be able to trace and track it, right? Like
Hmm.
attribution. uh if you're a typical person in your journey, right, you are going to maybe see 10 influencers का content आप Instagram पे रोज scroll करते हो,
Hmm.
फिर you know done. Then you probably see ads on YouTube, you see ads in the newspaper, you talk to your friends, right? And then one fine day suddenly आपको डैंड्रफ होता है तो आप जाके जेप्टो पे एंटी डैंड्रफ शैम्पू सर्च करते हो. Should I attribute it to those 10 influencers?
Absolutely not.
Should I attribute it to an ad that I see on an e-commerce platform? Where do I attribute it, right? So at the end of the day, over the last few years, this whole obsession with attribution and so many tools and businesses just trying to solve for justification, right?
Huh.
As analytics is has really taken away the charm of marketing, right? And that sort of brings me to the point that there is prescriptive analytics and there's descriptive analytics and all sort of analytics that you should look at. And it's not that I'm not a big believer in numbers. I actually once did an in-house social media listening project entirely on my own and build like a case study for a GTM around it. Right. And I went through data, but that kind of exercise, when the point of data is to not worry about, hey, mera click through rate 4% hai ya 3.7% hai. If you're a
Hmm.
small business, at your scale, it really doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Absolutely.
But the point of data is to look at, hey, how my users behaving,
Hmm.
right? And then incrementally, what have I changed by doing this? And that incrementality is very important.
Hmm.
Because you'll never be able to figure out ki I sent a WhatsApp, I sent an email, and I'm also running Google ads, I'm also running meta ads, and I'm also showing stuff on YouTube. At where did this person connect the dots and decide to purchase me, right?
Even you don't have idea on. Hmm.
No, and there is sure a lot of money to be made
Absolutely.
by obsessing over marketers' insecurities on attribution. The most fulfilling part of marketing is when 3 4 5 महीने कुछ नहीं होता है and then boom suddenly बहुत कुछ हो जाता है, because what has happened is that either user behavior has shaped or something has happened that's moved the numbers, but that's not a good story to tell your boss, right? Because your boss wants to know कि अच्छा प्रोडक्ट ने 4 फीचर रिलीज किया, सेल्स का इतना क्लोजिंग चल रहा है, मार्केटिंग क्या कर रही है, एंड देन यू कैन से मैंने इस हफ्ते 10 ईमेल भेजे और मैंने 2 फिल्म बनाई, राइट? बिकॉज देन इट सीम्स लाइक यू जस्ट हैव इनपुट केपीआईज, एवरीवन हैज आउटपुट केपीआईज,
Right.
बट द joy of marketing is in the quality of the input KPIs.
And to
Yeah.
some extent, it's also compound returns that you get, right,
Yes, it's a
in the
very
field.
long term thing. And then,
Hmm.
but it just, I think, has become an almost unhealthy obsession in the last few years.
Hmm.
I do value good digital insights that you get, right? Because now you're sitting on CDP, you're sitting on so much customer data.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
should use customer data to understand the customer. You should use customer data uh, or platform data to optimize campaigns to a certain extent,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
but you cannot report CTR and CPC and CPL as the holy grail, because that data is exceedingly misleading. And marketers who actually can see through, the cloud, uh, can realize कि ये दूध का दूध और पानी का पानी है,
Pani, huh.
नहीं मैटर करता, as long as overall business is growing. Over a period of time you realize कि what KPIs matter.
Hmm.
You will soon realize कि is my category share increasing,
Hmm.
right? My category share has nothing to do with my CTR. So if as a marketer I'm bothered about my CTR and I'm not bothered about my category share or my share of voice, right, or the ratio of my CAC
Mm.
to LTV when I acquire a customer,
Hmm. Hmm.
what am I focusing on? Focusing on the right things is half the battle won, and most marketers don't do it well because everybody wants to say, "Na, I have done this and I have lowered this KPI." Because in companies and in organizations, we reward people who show
Results.
results and vanity metrics,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
is what brings me to that first point that I made, right? 0 to 1 mein you can't do this, you can't hide.
Yeah.
Ma-
So what are
so
things that you suggest 0 to 1 journey founders should focus on when it comes to founder-led marketing, let's say?
I think the one thing that a lot of founders can do now is founder led storytelling, because founder led storytelling on social is A, cheap, B, if you're building in public, and if your TG is public, gets you a lot of attention from early on.
Hmm.
C, if you make mistakes, right, people are more forgiving because they're seeing you work in real time.
Right.
I really love what Fredo is doing right now.
Hmm.
I mean, they are, of course, a good brand and they have an interesting array of products. But what they've done is, right, that they're just talking real time. Hey, this chair. Hey, this backrest, this color or that color, right? So when
Hmm.
you do that, when you're just talking to people online all the time, it's wonderful. And I think founders should explore that space. And the good thing is that that works very well in the consumer space because you don't really have entry.
Direct connect.
Yeah.
Huh.
Huh. And it also works very well if you're making other products, right? I think people
Hmm.
who are creating products targeted to a certain community or a niche, right? Say if you're building something in fintech, then it's really nice if you have your niche of followers, even if your followers are very small, but talking to them.
Right.
So I think founder led, like, branding and marketing and storytelling is incredibly important and brings a lot of credibility. But
Hmm.
along with credibility, it also helps you, forgive mistakes a lot faster because you're seeing
Absolutely.
transparency. And in today's time, people trust transparency and authenticity. They like it. They like knowing कि वहाँ पे क्या चल रहा है. And
Because automation is something that everyone can do.
yes, audiences are very voyeuristic
Huh.
now. I think I remember uh, reading this somewhere, that what kind of content does really well on Instagram in India? A day in the life of, get ready with me. You know why? Because people inherently are voyeuristic. They want to see kya chal raha hai. People want to see their food being cooked in open kitchens. People want to see ki, okay, what is the kind of botox that this model has got, right? And what is the kind of sourcing that this founder is doing? What is the material? People enjoy that. So I think number one, I would say founder led storytelling.
It's a limited seats psychology sort of a thing, creating that FOMO in the first place so that you end up paying attention to
Yeah, I think not more than FOMO, I would say curiosity.
curiosity.
People, yeah,
Yeah,
people are always curious. The other thing that I would say in terms of the whole 0 to 1 stage, apart from founder led branding, is to invest disproportionately uh, in customer understanding,
Hmm.
and not jumping the gun too soon. So I recently was talking to a group of 18 entrepreneurs in a session.
Hmm.
This had been done by an incubator, and I was very interested to see how they built their hypothesis कि ये क्यों करना है, ये कैसे करना है. So the founder was building something in pickleball, and why did he choose the model? What was he thinking? And I realized that one common thread, when you get a lucrative business idea, is to jump the gun too soon on customer insights. So you've spoken to customers and they're all telling you this is a great idea, this is a great idea. But you've not checked for interest to pay, which is why monetization then becomes a challenge, right? Will people fundamentally pay for this, right? So the second thing that is crucial in 0 to 1 is to understand the customer deeply. Not कि उसको क्या पसंद है, उसको क्या चाहिए, but वो किस चीज के लिए will he do that UPI transfer? Will he loosen his wallet?
And it's not just a thin line between attention and conversion.
Yeah.
It's a big space in between.
Yes, because attention you can grab by doing lots of things, right?
Correct.
But getting that sale, right? And how that, and I think a lot of founders don't spend enough time. I know it seems ironical because I'm saying this, and if there's a founder listening to this, they'll probably say like, हम तो सारा time customer के बारे में सोचते हैं. But not, that's not true. You are thinking of the customer
From your lens.
from your lens. You're not thinking of the customer from the customer's lens, which is why so many good businesses, fail, because they've thought of the problem from, अच्छा मैं ये कर सकता हूँ, मैं ये दे सकता हूँ, मैं. They've not thought of tum. And that is crucial to the 0 to 1 stage, which is why I like the founder led storytelling idea, because you constantly have people giving you feedback saying ये अच्छा नहीं है, वो अच्छा नहीं है,
Even on the content itself, you
Yes.
get lots of
Yes.
insights.
You get tons of insights for free, right?
For free, yes. So, Ayushi, we come to the very last part of this entire conversation, and where we basically ask every guest about the resources that they want to share with our audience. It can be movie, it can be book, anything that you want to refer.
So I think I'm going to talk about books first.
Please.
I don't
Since I
know.
know a story about it, so please.
So I love reading, and I ran Broke Bibliophiles as a community for 7 years, and I did this whole India Book podcast. I think people just associate me with book recommendations now. Nobody, I think, in my life has asked me for a movie recommendation. People just ask me for book recommendations. But I tell everyone to read Alchemy because it brings that whole wave of uh, marketing as a non-rational function back. And I think it's a delightful book to read. The anecdotes are wonderful. The other book that I tell people to read is Byron Sharp's How Brands Grow. I know it's a classic, right? But it is fundamentally about mental availability and physical availability. You can build the best product in the world, but if somebody can't download it from the Play Store, or if somebody sees the competitors' products before yours, you're dead. So I think that's the second book that I really enjoy. I think one book that I have recently read, which I thought was extremely valuable, is this book called Essentialism, which
Okay.
is about prioritization. And I think I enjoyed reading it because today, more than ever before in the history of marketing, you have so many options. Where do you go, right? You're no longer restricted to a Doordarshan and a Times of India.
True.
You're not even restricted to like an IPL and a World Cup. The marketing is so fragmented. Not marketing. Marketing is consolidated, but media is fragmented. So essentialism really tells you to focus. It's not a book about marketing. It's a book which is largely about making trade-offs and philosophical decisions around that.
Hmm.
But I enjoyed reading it, and I think a lot of marketers need to read it because every time an agency will come and pitch to you, they'll say, ye sab kar do. You
Right.
can't do one or two things really well,
Hmm.
and it makes a world of difference. So I think these are the three books that I would tell people to read. There are also tons of good books on like advertising, branding. There's so much to read, really. I think maybe I'll give one Indian business book recommendation, which is The CEO Factory by Sudhir Sitapati.
Okay.
I hoping I'm pronouncing his name correctly, otherwise it'll be very embarrassing. But it's basically about how Unilever approached brand building,
Hmm.
and for a lot of aspiring young marketers, it's a wonderful book to read. Uh, and if you're a startup oriented marketer, because he
Right.
spoke a lot about 0 to 1
Zero to
marketing,
one.
product
Yes.
marketing. I think everyone should read 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. Because it clarifies a lot of things for you, even though it's got nothing to do with marketing directly. But it's just interesting to read that as well. These are all classics and common books. I wish I would have like recommended something a little offbeat, but I think these are like basic books that everyone should read.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the 0 to 1 is something that, someone who is thinking to start a business or a tech startup or anything like that, right? That's a must read, right? Great. Thank you so much, Ayushi, for joining us today. It was pleasure having you.
Thank you. The pleasure's all mine, and thank you for having me over.
Yeah, thanks. Our main goal with this podcast is to bring insightful conversation to help you grow in your career by inviting leaders who are driving impact at scale. If you find this episode useful, make sure you subscribe because that only helps us to invite incredible guests for the future episodes. And in case you have any suggestions about who we should invite and what all topic we should cover, let us know in the comment section below. We are always listening to make sure we deliver exactly what you are looking for.